We are live. It's Saturday. I am very excited for today's topic and guest. I am here with. Oh wait. Oh, let me. Okay, I'm here with Garlock from. You're in the UK, right? Ireland.
Ireland, yes, not the UK.
Not the.
100 years ago, fought a war of independence. Definitely not in the UK. I'm only
Um.
joking. I was actually born in the UK.
Oh, okay. Well, he's here to. We're going to talk about men's mental health today. So I figured I'd start out with giving you a chance to say a little bit about yourself and your background, and maybe your personal story, and then we can start talking about some of the work that you do in men's mental health.
Sure. So I grew up as a kid in the UK to an Irish family, lived in uh, an Irish enclave, and then returned back to Ireland again when I was young. Lived in an Irish city, was kind of raised on we call them council estates, you probably call them ghettos or something
The
equivalent,
projects.
the projects. Uh, but rather than just being a victim of it and people getting stuck there, my family seemed to kind of make it their home and had a way of living in it, you know. So it wasn't just turfed out. My father actually really trained us for staying and living in that environment. I ended up in crime. He was running semi-legal business to do with security, where you're pretending to be legitimate security, but what you're really is watching something to do with crime. You're watching over a drug dealer or uh, other stuff that would be going on, and quite often the people that we're watching over don't even know that we're watching.
Oh,
And
wow.
your job is to go get the drugs back if somebody steals them, that type of shit. uh, and other stuff. But yeah, my father had kind of this was his business, you know, and he had 9 kids, 5 sons, and we were he in his head he was raising an army.
What position were you in the family?
I'm number three, the second boy, so I'm boy girl boy, and I'm number three. And my eldest brother actually ran away at 15. He couldn't take my father at all.
Oh,
And later at 16 joined up with the army. He was couch surfing, joined up with the army, and then gone.
were you aware, okay, growing up, that this was criminal activity or legal? I
Oh
guess
yeah,
this
yeah.
was normal to you growing up.
Yeah, yeah. There was this feeling of we were raised to feel like we were on the outside of society, you know. And then when you start behaving like that, people treat you like that, and and then there's a misreading of how people just treat strangers, and then how where we lived specifically, it was socially advantageous not to appear like you're ready to fight at the drop of a hat, and to respond very aggressively to interactions, and especially with other men. But there was this constant threat that it's going to erupt in a fight at any moment, and it did a lot, you know. But that doesn't carry, into the city center,
So this was not
where the
urban.
normal.
This was not urban.
This was urban, but it wasn't the shopping
Oh,
district.
okay.
You know, this stuff doesn't happen in restaurants, and like the rest of the city seems to exist separate to it. you
Like
know,
kind of
the,
the
the,
underworld.
yeah, the forgotten people. You just don't drive out that way, and they stay out there. They don't.
What were your prospects as a kid? Like, what hopes or
I've
did you
I
see?
was always told that I was going to be taking over my father's business and taking it to the next level. That was
And
it.
you were okay with that? That's just something you accepted.
Well, when my older brother ran away, I felt like now was my chance,
Ah,
you know, uh, and I was better at it than my older brother. So I was meaner, you know. So we would all fight, and I would be the one that would always go that little bit extra, I'd be the one that would actually bite someone, you know.
Was that innate? Like you had an instinct for it, or were there social factors?
Well, there's definitely something in my family because my father was like that and my grandfather was like that, but they have brothers, you know. So like my father was picked by my grandfather. He was like, okay, you're like me. And I was picked by my father and he said, you're like me, you know, more so than my older brother. He wanted it to be the firstborn son because in his head, he was building an empire and he was going to, oh, empire is the wrong word. It's not an empire, you know, like a family, you know, a family tree where we were all going to be involved and we were going to take it to the next level. And he wanted the girls to get educated and be law and, you know, gangster thinking. Right?
Well, I mean, you got to kind of admire the ambition.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, in a very, very odd way, right? He rebelled against his father. This is something I didn't find out until after he was dead. I didn't put it all together because I didn't meet the right people. I met a lot of people at his funeral that I followed up on to find out what happened when I was too young or before I was born, you know. And his father, who died when I was very young, had used to run dog fights and gambling.
Hmm.
And it was like a death trap. So he was basically spending all of his time beating money out of people, you know. And my father rebelled against that, thought it was cruel, and decided he was going to take this semi-legit route. And I do believe early on, at one point, he thought he was going to be completely legit, you know. But in his head, he was going to take the best of what my grandfather had, which was the ability to train kids into whatever you want them to be, right? And if some of them will run away, and some of them will be what you want them to be, you know. And he just replayed that, but he did it in his own thing. And then I'm after doing the same thing in my life. I rebelled against him and said, look, fucking violence as a means of getting your way isn't necessary. Like, you know, think you can make money legally without hurting people, you know. The temptation is too great. You're like, more money than you need is actually worse for you than just enough, you know.
Oh, I believe it.
And like I took all of that and said, I'm leaving it all behind. And I felt like I was just leaving a whole world. In fact, it wasn't anything like that. It was exactly the same thing he was doing. It was a lot less dramatic. It's a perfectly normal part of my cycle.
What
as
what
a
led
man, as a man, to take what was good and what I liked, change it, and carry on.
which is
You
what he
know?
did.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
led you
yeah.
to the repudiation of violence, and like what was your journey out of it?
Uh, that was in prison. I ended up like I went into prison, and on my way out of prison, I didn't waste any time. I left the city straight away, and I was done on my way out.
What age were
Uh,
you?
24.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about to turn 25.
So that was the turning point for you?
Uh, yeah, 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 yeah. So when I was leaving prison, I was like, there is no way, because even the prison sentence itself was part of it. Like, so it was expected that I would go to jail at some point. Something would be laid on me, right, to facilitate something political, right, where they needed a charge against somebody for something. I would go to jail for a couple of years, and when I came out, I wouldn't be afraid of the police anymore. Right? I would know the system. I wouldn't have this fear of being caught in the same way. You know, I would look at it completely differently. And he was right about that. You know, that it's a boogeyman in your head, getting caught, getting sent to prison. He wanted rid of that. You know, so what? And then part of the whole crime scene involves people needing to be arrested for stuff and it looking like people are doing stuff, and in reality, it's the same people. It's all the same people, you know. and some stuff needs to get done outside of what the law permits, and so there's a whole economy of that happening.
And that's probably everywhere, like not just Ireland.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is just how people behave. It's a bit like PC culture. Like we've got websites where people can talk in ways that they can't talk on the front. You've got when the most restricted people are probably politicians as to what they can and cannot say.
Mm-hmm.
What they know and why they make the decisions they make. We're never going to find that out. Like what they say to us is a completely different thing. The illusion is like the problem. The difficulty is trying to play the game, because there's always stuff you can say and you can't say in any settings. Like so when children are around, there's stuff I don't talk about in front of my kids, obviously. So it's like, yeah. It just grew up in it. And then when I was in prison, I met some older guys that were never getting out, and I met a priest, and they were talking philosophy, and they invited me to join in on their groups, and just listening to I didn't know there was other perspectives. I was that ignorant.
These were fellow prisoners.
Yeah. The priest was the priest of the prison. This is where he worked, like a doctor or whatever. And anybody who wanted a priestly service in any form could request it. And he had an office, and if on his call, then he can invite you to his office or whatever. As a prisoner, you can just request that he come down to your cell and say a rosary with you, or perform a service for a ritual for something that's happening outside of the prison, somebody's funeral, or but that particular priest was in there trying to save people. He wasn't just doing a job. He had the opportunity to travel or go do a bit in Rome or try to ascend the ranks or whatever, but he took his job seriously, and he went to where he felt the worst sinners were and went trying saving souls, So yeah.
Well, it sounds like it worked in your case, or helped.
Yeah. Well, it was part of a long journey, and he was one of many figures. I mean, like, I was listening one time to two guys, and it's just bizarre. But then, like, I was very extreme, so it would take something bizarre to change my mind anyway.
Oh yeah.
But there was these guys, right? One of them had shot his wife and his wife's boyfriend after catching them together. He had done, I think, 16 years or something for that. And when he got out, he killed that fella's parents straight, and then went back to prison himself. Right. So whatever happened, he was probably already mad, and that was what set him off. And he was talking to another guy, and that guy had set people on fire for money. As in, somebody had paid him to go make an example of somebody, and he had, like, maybe they were thinking hit him in the hand with a hammer. He had doused him in petrol and set him on fire. Right. And these two were discussing the morality of this Muslim guy who had killed his own daughter in an honor killing. And it was in Germany, so he'd been arrested and he was serving life in prison in Germany. Right. And it was like, like, okay, nobody, like, you can't pass judgment in that position, right? It kind of makes you wonder, how hypocritical am I? That was the first kind of self-reflection, because I was listening to these two guys and I was like, you twos are fucking psycho, right? And, like, tell the guards I'll do it. I'll save everybody money. Like, you two need to be put down. Whatever's gone wrong, They're never getting out of prison, either of them, right? And but the fact that they could then they'd somehow reconciled their own actions and freed themselves up to think morally about the actions of somebody else doing something, right? And I had kind of said that, like, at least, like, the Muslim guy probably did the worst out of the lot of you because he killed his own daughter. But that's by your values, In his head, he was doing the right thing, but it's just not acceptable by society, Like, like that's the conversation, and that's when the priest said, "I need to see you in my office." And he was like, he thought that I then, as he said, you've got an idea, so let's develop that idea. And I spent hours talking to the priest and then talking to the other people that he invited to talk to, and it was all around calling each other hypocrites. Right? Nobody got off scot-free. Anybody could say anything to anybody. There was a guard there with a cattle prod, so nobody wasn't going to get out of hand. Right? And the priest could get everybody to call everybody on their bullshit, right? And it was just a contest of how much of your own self can you see through other people, because sometimes they'll project at you, and other times they'll see it where even you can't see it.
Yeah.
And it's all talking about what happened and what happened to different people, and it was all very extreme, and then, I started reading, and I thought, okay. And then I was encouraged by a guy I was sharing a cell with to finish high school while I was still there. He was like, do it on your countdown. You've seen what the place is like. There's nothing interesting happening. What else are you doing? Get your high school qualifications.
Had you been part of the public school system before?
Yeah, the minimum is 16.
Okay.
Otherwise, they come looking for you, And so everybody does it to 16. And then, I wasn't aware until afterwards that it's standard to do it till 18. That 16 is the minimum, and they allow you to leave at 16 if you're going to be a certain trade to go into training. But if you want to go on to do any other education, you need to go and finish those 2 years before you're eligible. Or whatever, I did that. It wasn't that hard. It was actually all right. I got used to get 2 hours of tutelage, so I got to go up to the library for 2 hours to meet somebody from the government section in education, where they kept me up to speed once a week. Other than that, I did it all from my own books. I was given the books and I did it myself. But that was that just kind of transformed me. And it was like, I read a book on gardening and growing vegetables, and I thought, I can do that. The whole time I was thinking, what can I offer the world? How can I join society when what I'm good at is intimidating people and organizing a group to operate outside the law? Right. And so I was like, right, I'm going to learn how to grow vegetables, and then I'm going to organize other people to grow vegetables so I can organize something else, And it's all paperwork, and I hate paper. I hate it. Like, I can do it, but most of the information is like, I have to do it myself. I can't give everybody I can't bring myself to let anybody else know that level of detail about my business.
Okay. So is that what you did? You started?
Yeah. When I left prison, I just I called in a couple of loans. I had about 15 grand, and I went and rented a field, got ripped off. Ripped off, right? But I talked a farmer into renting me a field, right? And letting me pitch a tent in it and live in it, which is completely against the law, while I grew some potatoes, and that I didn't have very much money. See, I didn't think about it in terms of get a job and get paid weekly and then find something within that budget. I wasn't actually financially literate. I was used to getting 75 grand every 150 grand here, and then you're kind of, that was what I was used to. I wasn't used to this kind of rhythm to money, this weekly and monthly rhythm to money, and so I wasn't thinking like that. I was thinking, I've got my little pot of money. I have to try to make this, invest enough of it into an idea of some description and live off the rest of it. And I figured if I lived in a tent and I just ate noodles, then I could invest a load of it into trying to get a farm started. And that's what I did. And the only reason I moved out of the tent was because I met my wife in the meantime.
Oh.
And she was like, I'm not living in a fucking tent with you, you fool. I'm not even, and she was like, hey, look, whatever, come back to me when you've got your shit together, she kind of laughed at the idea. Because I was like, obviously the type of woman you meet when you're living that life isn't the type of woman that kind of, as I say, she comes from a similar background, let's say, and so like me coming out of prison saying I'm going to start a farm. So yeah, peace.
How did you end up meeting?
I met her at at the party that my father put on for when I got released from prison.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did she end up at that kind of party?
She was working with a friend of my sister's, and she's German, and she had just moved to Ireland. She just moved to Ireland, escaping, leaving her city, right? Destination anywhere.
Oh.
Right. And she's a tailor, and my sister's sister and her friend had worked in a tailoring place where people got their clothes fixed, or stuff made. And she that's what she did. She went there, they were there. She ended up at the homecoming. I came home. I met her there that night. She instantly stood out as not of the rest and needing a change, But when I was like, right, I'm going to go live in a field, in a tent, 3 years, I'm going to do this. She was like, yeah, whatever. She was like, come back when you get somewhere to bring me, like, and okay, because I was trying to ask her out,
Oh, while you were in the field.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't even left, We hit it off instantly. The first night I met, I sat on the steps of the bar out the back for about 4 hours talking to her. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, come away with me. And she was like, I'm not living in a tent.
Well, good for her.
She was like, come back when you've got something. So it was through, she inspired me to speed up the plans to live inside, and I managed to talk a guy into letting me renovate a cottage so long as I lived in it. They had it was watertight. That was enough to start with. And then the rest of it just been run down. Nobody lived in it for like 20 years or something. And I was like, can you let me live in there and I'll restore it? Because I didn't want to pay rent. I was looking at rent as going to cost me 12 grand a year.
Oh.
Because, I just wasn't thinking that way, whereas I could have just got a job, it was the obvious thing. But in my mind, I was unemployable. I was a scumbag who was trying to change himself, and I didn't want to present myself to the world until I was ready and felt like I wasn't a stain on society.
Oh, wow. Did that help turn some of that around? Like,
yeah. Well, no, once my farm started working, I was knocking on doors selling bags of potatoes at the start until I eventually got into a shop, and and then eventually got chased by the government to sign up, and then realized it was just paperwork, and that if you don't do it, they send you a letter.
Oh.
Like, what's it? they're like, we're going to cancel your license. It was like, I didn't ask you to give me you told me I have to have the license anyway. Cancel it away, motherfuckers. You know? I was like, what's this? What's this? I was expecting the police to come around and tell me to stop growing potatoes. It was
Oh,
you know, like, none of that stuff happens. It's like in a legitimate business, people send each other letters, you know.
did you get the form? So you got the form going eventually? You were successful?
Yeah. In my second year, I got completely brought on board, and the Department of Agriculture sent somebody out and were like, you don't have to hide.
Oh,
We can do this. It's fine. There's no tax on raw food. You're okay. And kind of encouraging me to join the system and, you know, not be this like vagabond going around selling bags of potatoes door to door and
oh,
actually just.
is that what you still do now? I know you do work with men too.
I do. So yeah, I got the farm up and running. It sells vegetables and garnishes and stuff, and it's all 5-star hotels. So it's decorative stuff mostly. That was where I found the money in the market was.
Are you still living in the cottage?
No, no, no. I was like, my wife thought it was quaint, but I was like, I'm going to drop a bomb on that. I didn't fall in love with it when I was finished. I couldn't wait to get out of there.
Mm.
Yeah, it was way more effort than it required, you know. And the last 6 months of repairs, I did it. I knew then how bad a deal I had struck for myself, and it took a lot of commitment to finish it off, you know. I probably in work, I probably paid about 80 grand for 4 years rent. In the work that I had to put into it, you know, to fulfill my agreement to restore it back to something that he could rent out, you know. It was a way bigger job. I was just young. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I'll figure it out. Anyway, you live and you learn. Yeah, and then sorry, I do that. That's all kind of mostly run, and I oversee it and do the paperwork, and I do some of the deliveries. But I mostly now go do tree work, a bit of dendrology, which is spotting diseases, and managing private woodland areas to do with estates and stuff. Private woodlands, where I'll start collect, kind of tag a tree, say that one's worth a fortune if I can find a buyer for it. And people that buy it are people that make furniture and door frames for mansions, hotels, big money stuff.
Oh.
And we'll start collecting the seed from it. So we'll plant 100 of its children before we cut it down. And so we'll grow the seed into seedlings and we'll plant it in the same forest, in a forest expansion scheme. And so like we can cut some, and it pays for it all. So that one tree pays for the forest expansion for that area. You know, the landowner gets a big chunk of money to let us do it, you know, and to leave it alone, not sell it themselves, you know, because once they hear somebody kind of going, oh, can I buy that tree? They go, oh my God, I've got a really expensive tree, and they think they're going to make millions, but you know. And then I use that exercise to take a gang of guys out that need help, who come from prison, same prison, who can't get work because they're convicts. And the probation officer picks out the ones that come from roughly the same background as me and that were doing the same kind of thing, you know, and the same kind of crimes. And will kind of partner me up with them, and I will employ them for 2 years. And then they've got enough on they've got you call it a resume, you call it a CV, like something to say what you're doing. 2 years is enough to say, with a reference, we'll get you on to what you want to do next, you know. And that, like, help them out getting driver's license or get them back into school if they haven't finished high school, you know. Laser the tattoos off their face.
Oh,
If
the
they
prison
want,
tattoos.
And then continue the philosophy that they would have been taught in the prison by the priest.
Is this where you develop the axe work that you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
So I used to get great therapy out of chopping logs and chopping trees down with an axe, and I'd be off doing it on my own. And then I make a bit of a song and dance about it, that I'm cutting it down with an axe as part of the sales of selling the tree, and we take photographs. It's part done with community work and we geotag it. But the guys coming out of the prison every now and then, well, this is the one that I described on Benjamin Boyce's podcast. Was it the one that you were talking about?
I think so.
I'm not going over that again, right? The exact story, but the practice is very, very physical, and it's about how your state of consciousness, your mental state, how the emotions that your decisions sit on, and that are driving your decisions, that changes when you exhaust yourself, and then you get really emotional. And so I would use the physical exercise of chopping the tree down with the axe as metaphorical for going somewhere, getting somewhere, because it's hard to do, like, and because it's physical, it can really tire you out. And that's when people are tired like that, and you're sweating, and you're then and you've got somebody giving you either competition or goading or encouragement or shame or something to make you keep going more than you would if you were just doing it for yourself. Like, it engages you with whoever does that to you, connects you to them, and then all of a sudden you start feeling in opposite to each other, so like I'm feeling in an outward aggression and he's feeling in an inward aggression, where he's trying to put that inward aggression into the axe,
And you're able to pick up
and he's
all
expressed
of
this
this.
physically. Yeah. We're just like, I mean, I know where I'm going with the exercise of trying to get somebody exhausted. I can do these. I did it with cold shock in a lake as well. So it was a slightly it was a less manic one, but it was about the cold water. So I took a guy to and again, the whole point of this was we were all working together, and he still had his front up. He was still making jokes. He wouldn't loosen up. Right. And as soon as my back was turned, he was laughing at the people who were trying to embrace the idea of being more honest about themselves. Stop the hard man walk and just start learning how to walk properly. Little things like that. And I was saying, like, you're not impressing me with the hard man shit. Stop it. And he couldn't stop it. He was really having difficulty letting go. And I needed to talk to him about his father, because I knew his dad, and I could guess what was going on with him. And I needed to let him know that I knew, so that he, but I wanted it to come from him rather than me say it, And so I was like, look, one day I sent me out, the other guys off with another lad that works with us. And I took him on my own and we drove out to the lake, which isn't that far away. I didn't tell him why we were going. He was just at work, And when we got there, I said, we're going to walk out to where the drop is, the cliff. And when we dropped down, I was like, we're going to then swim the rest of the way to the island. And the island looks really far, but it's about a mile. But it looks really far. Right. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, don't worry, I've done it loads of times. Come on. I'm like, what? And so he was like, what? And I said, I'm taking my clothes off anyway. I'm going to leave. I'm not getting my clothes wet. You can do what you want. Right. And like, what? And I was like, come on. So I'm just walking out into the water, but I'm trying to keep my shit together because the water's cold. Like, And then eventually he takes some of his clothes off and he comes in and he starts walking. He's like, "What the fuck are we doing?" Right? And I'm kind of teasing him about being a bit of a pussy and he can't take it. What you're says what? I was like, yeah, you're telling us you'll kung fu 3 guys outside a nightclub, but you won't walk in the water with me. What are you, afraid to get wet? Type thing. We get walking out, and as we're walking, like I'm like, look, when we get to the edge of the cliff, I was like, how strong a swimmer are you? Because that might pull us down a bit. Do you want to hold my hand? Do you know? Because he knows that I do a lot of surfing. You know, I'm like, I says, we'll be grand, but it's the only way to get to the lake. I'm told this does I would have no. All right, like I said, the only way to get out to the lake is to swim. I says that's what makes it worth going out there. You know? He's like, all right, all right, all right, all right. So he's holding my hand. So we're walking along now, and he's freezing. But it comes up to about the belly button. And we're walking and walking, and he starts talking. And he said it to me. He says, "Did you know my dad?" I don't like, I didn't do anything other than walk him into the lake. Didn't open, he opened with that. So we start talking about it, right? And then as we're walking along, he's like, and I'm going, yeah, it's freezing, knowing that as long as you keep your heart above the water, you're okay. But it's not really getting any deeper, and he doesn't notice it, right? And then we're walking along, and he was like, starts talking about, okay, well, do you ever remember? And he remembered another guy, and we spoke about an incident that happened, and he spoke about how it affected him from his 10-year-old eyes, or whatever it was at the time. And like, I said it to him, I was like, is that where your anger comes from? And he didn't really respond. He didn't, but that was enough. I only needed to say it. He only needed to know that somebody else knows, that this is normal. This is just a connection that can be done. That I, as a separate person to him, can see that through what I've seen. And then he didn't feel it wasn't as deep in him, I don't think, anymore. So then we start walking up, right? We get to the lake and it never drops off. It's just shallow, and then the rest of the guys are there because it's not an island. It just looks like an island, and they had driven around and they're there with blankets and tracksuit for us to put on, and we crack a beer and I would have liked to have had a fire, but on that occasion we didn't. We actually just left quite quick. Oh. But we kind of celebrated it then later on. And I invited some of them to come back after work, and we had a bit of whiskey around the fire, and it was just kind of everybody else that he met on the other side, I have done something weird with, right? So they knew they were waiting for him, and I had decided to walk across the lake with him. And I don't know, like, why did I pick it? I didn't think fighting with him would help, right? He was the kind of guy that would end up getting his friend in a fight, and he would kind of hold back, and then when everybody else is tangled up, he'd start hitting. Right? He's not somebody that I would connect with through fighting with directly. So other guys I would fight with him. I would like, okay, Jesus, I'm gonna end up having to fucking fight with him. The problem is he won't listen to me because he thinks that the only people he should listen to are people that he can beat in a fight, or that can beat him in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
That's where his mind is at, right? And he, okay, and then I kind of turn the fight into a bit of a joke. So I'll hit him, and then I'll let him hit me to some degree. I try not to get knocked out, obviously. But if he's throwing knockout punches, he ain't gonna hit me anyway. That's not how it works. That's not real fighting, So like, it's more like aggressive sparring, but then I'll intentionally tie him up and frustrate him, and then start laughing at him, and then kind of find a way to introduce the idea of how stupid it is that we have to try to hurt each other before we can talk to each other.
Why is that, do you think, with men?
There is definitely a emotional state that I call the peace talk.
Peace talk?
The peace talk. Uh, that you can only get through high conflict. You know, like it's almost like it is very close to how dogs behave. When if a dog challenges you as its master and you shut it down, right, it will whimper. That is an instinct, right? When somebody's physically dominated and that they can't resolve this issue by trying to win, they go into a I'm your best friend mode, right? And then quite often the victor will feel overwhelming compassion towards this shift because you see it could be you, maybe one of those only just missed. Right, so when you see that shift, it engages a feeling of pity, which then platforms a reciprocal kind of a connection. So there is a whimper up and a blessing down, like almost this paternal, oh, it wasn't that bad. You're a good guy, really, you know. But it has to be done. Somebody has to win for that to happen,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And like that has to be achieved with some people. Like, well, I don't know if that is a universal statement. This is how I have connected with 4 different young men who were destined to go and hurt more people, you know. We're looking forward to the opportunity when nobody was looking, and they could get away with it, you know. Their problem was they were almost definitely going straight back to jail if they slipped up, you know, rather than their problem being they didn't know a way forward. And then how do you give them inspiration not to be like that? And don't get me wrong, I don't have 100% record. Quite a few guys have ended up back in prison. I've had quite a few that were great for the couple of years they with me, and for about 6 months afterwards, and then straight back, you know. There's a few people who had like addictions that I couldn't break through,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I kind of had to say to stop sending me people where the root of their problem is what they're addicted to. I can't talk to somebody who's jacked up, like, you know.
What do you think made the difference with the ones that were not addicted that ended up going back?
Like it's hard to know. I don't know. Well, I mean, some of them like didn't even finish the 2 year. Quite a few of them didn't finish the 2 years.
Mm.
I didn't see them again. I don't know what happened. You know, like you know, as I say, I tend to have a fond memory around the maybe 20, 25 guys that I feel I influenced over 12 years. You know, for the positive. And to varying degrees of success. I mean, like, you know, can't forget that the bar is quite low for what's an improvement. So, like, now I've kind of opened myself a little bit more to other people. So I have another group of fathers, we'll call it, right, where I know their fathers, kind of. Some of them are loose connections, right, and through these men's fathers ended up speaking to me about their adult sons who had kids recently, young children, right? And their life was a disaster. Like either they weren't involved with the kid, didn't want to be involved with the kid, the partnerships with the woman was terrible. And then there was a couple of other people not really in that predicament. And when I opened it, when I tried to do it at the beginning before COVID, I made it a father's hiking group And then this is what it kind of morphed into. And when we tried to get back together after COVID, it really became about one about 4 or 5 of them guys in particular, you know, and helping them get back on track. And then it was like, hang on a second, these guys have grown up in middle class land, you know, they have education like freely available that they didn't, you know, they were encouraged to go to school. School was a value in their house, and they just whatever, you know. And they're not really addicts. I mean, it was easy to knock, you know, they're not addicts. They smoke a bit of weed, but like not every day. They can't afford it. They've no income. So, you know, yeah, it'd be like really, really poor people don't have addictions. Not what they've got. I mean, their problems are fucking porn, which is what poor man's cracking. You know, if you're 15 and you don't have a drug dealer, porn will do it, I suppose. And I'm starting to kind of realize that, hang on a minute, it's not like the rest of society has it all sorted out either. And then I'm trying to find the words for all of this stuff. Like, so I don't think that people are okay. So you get people that are born in poverty, or that are stuck in poverty. They're not from poverty. They're stuck in poverty, and then they've ended up there somehow. They've got stuck there, and then you've got people that are just used to it. You know, they're like, it's a multi-generational thing. They have their way with it. You know, and they're like two separate. They're not as bash. So people that come from broken nuclear families seem to be like having the worst time of keeping it together. You know, it was like my transition into being civilized. It was like, oh, this actually felt quite easy. You know, it was like, I can deal with letters. I can deal with somebody in the post office being a bit grumpy. You know, this actually isn't that bad. You know, excuse me, waiter, I'm not happy with my food. And they don't even ask you what you're not happy about. They take it away and bring you another one. I didn't have to shout at anybody. I didn't have, like, this is fantastic. What's everybody complain? How is this difficult? You know? And it's like the waiter's having a bad day or they make a mistake and then somebody gets grumpy with them as a customer. And I'm like, nobody's attacking you. Why are you concerned? You know, it all just seems so like fucking the difference between light gray and dark gray, you know, compared to like what I would feel was very intense. And I suppose maybe that's why I got myself involved with the prison service, the probation service, and getting and working with the people that you sent me, because like that feels better to me, way better, you know. Feels like I'm doing something, like I'm alive, you know. And yeah, none of it needs words, you know. Like we're going go out for the day now, and I'm looking forward to it in October. Identifying and trying to pick wild mushrooms. Ireland is the land of mushrooms. We got all the good ones.
Oh,
And like there's some of them are great. Some of them I was like, if you find one, whoever spots it gets to claim the money on it, and I can bring it to a restaurant and sell it. You know, and we go mushroom hunt. So show them a book. All right, here's the top 10 of the price list, you know, of what you'll get. You know, top prize, if you find some of the really rare ones, you might get a couple of grand, you know.
wow.
And so I take them out into the forest mushroom hunting. And like if they already know me a bit, like this actually the mushroom day is why I start the project in January, because I want them to know me a bit before we do it, you know. Getting lost in the woods, and you know, I know the topography of the area, so I can just run around and take the piss out and jump out behind stuff. And I know where all the mushrooms are, so I can kind of, you know. help him. But there's just something about that, like October, forest light, the smell, the changing of the season, if you will. In Ireland, that's the end of summer, really. Right, so the browning. And the day of going mad, treasure hunting, really, and getting them to deeply inspect. And you find all sorts of stuff, they might see deer and whatever. And like, they come back like they've just been fed with something. I don't
Just
know
the
what it is.
experience.
I don't know what it is, but there is like the day after that, they're friends, in a different way than they were friends before, and they're more comfortable with me. And then it's coming into winter, and I'm not sure what it is about that. I mean, Ireland is quite dark in winter, so it's bright in summer and dark in winter, and so like, there's something about going into the darkness with something good, and then that build up to Christmas and the family season and all of that stuff, and I don't know why, like, don't know why, so I just keep doing it. However, I'm passing it off. I'm trying to unload it. I'm trying to continue on with my journey, I'm starting to feel like I've got too much road between me and my past now, and each group is feeling, a bit like a solar panel, you'll say. Every year it gets a couple of percent less effective.
Oh, what do you think is ahead for you?
I don't know, actually. Yeah. In that journey, I've just identified that I have to work out what to do in my middle age. I always felt that I had a good understanding of the fact that I was mortal. When I was younger, that you only live once, and and I had read in prison that line that you have two lives, and the second begins when you realize you have only one. And I'm feeling particularly mortal at the moment. I'm finding myself reflecting on, okay, I'm definitely over halfway in my life. I'm 43. So I don't think I'll be 86. That's highly unlikely, and so it's like, right, this has got a different feeling to it. This feels like going downhill, and trying to get just, as I say, it's just like, okay, there's this feeling that if I keep doing some things, that's all I'll do. And it's like, okay, I want to do something. It's a bit like, so like with the vegetable farming, once, like, it was a personal adventure, because it was at the same time I was trying to learn how to operate civilly, because I registered with everybody as a scumbag. They can hear it in the way that I speak and the way that I behave, and and the way that I walk and hold myself, and I had to unlearn all of that.
You did unlearn it?
Yeah. When somebody first drew my attention to the fact that I walk in a way that's designed to indicate that I'm willing to fight.
But you weren't conscious of that, huh?
I wasn't. I just thought I was walking.
I have
How it
so many
always walked. That's just the way that I walked.
Yeah, I'm very suspicious of people that try to change other people from their natural state.
Well, it was up to me whether or not I wanted to change it. It was just having my attention drawn that this is, it was drawn to my attention by a guy who this was in prison, right? But he was a normal person and gone nuts, right? And he was able to see us from the perspective of people that grow up in the suburbs, you'd say. We would, like people that are actually earning the average and living the average life type people, and he was kind of from that. So he was like, we didn't know what we looked like to other people. in the same way that you don't know what you look like to a scumbag. You know,
I have no idea what I look like to people.
uh, you know. Well, and this is it. Like, so when I was dealing with the people coming out of prison, I understood how they saw other people. But now I'm of an age where they're starting to look at me and they don't see themselves anymore. You know.
The people you work with, you mean?
Yeah. So I've never done any illegal business, including a smartphone or crypto. You know, I don't know what they're talking about anymore. In a lot of it, you know, and that makes it harder to connect with people when they can't see themselves. You know, for the purpose of what I was doing. You know? But then, yeah, I suppose when you were asking to speak about mental health, my mind was less gone to the work I was doing and more to the problem I'm having explaining like what I'm doing, why it works, how it helps people, and like what's translatable to outside of that stuff anyway. You know, these guys aren't thinking in words. There's no flow. I could say something unless I know they know what all the words mean in the same way that I know what the words mean. I'm not talking to them philosophy in any sense, you know. So we just live it instead. You know,
Well, I'm gonna tell you something that might help a bit. I've been fighting my own emotions for the past 20 minutes or so. Listening to your story was one of the most powerful stories I've heard in a long time. I didn't grow up with a father. I was on a similar path, not a criminal track, but definitely an outside society track. And just hearing your experiences and the work you're doing with those men awakened something in me. So just the act of telling your story and me hearing it is having a very part right now as we talk, and I'm trying to hold it in, is having an effect on me. Um, there's potential in something that you're doing because I'm feeling it right now.
all right, yeah. Maybe I don't need to wrap it into
I mean, I definitely want to go
philosophy.
chop trees and walk in the lake. I'd fly to Ireland to do that. It was that motivate. Like, there's so many things that I missed that I did not get that showed up in your story. Um, I guess I'm saying, like, don't sell yourself short or give up on your potential to be effective in some kind of way to help men.
Yeah, no, well, I'm always going to continue to do that because that's why I'm kind of speaking to the new group about being fathers. And I think that maybe they need some lessons from the gutter because they're all too clean and
Yeah,
people aren't clean.
that's why you
People
kind of made me nervous when you talked about changing yourself to fit in with society, because people are always trying to change me to, like, polish me, they call it, and I don't want to lose the. I like my roots and I like the values that it kind of helped to provide me, and so I don't want you to lose your roots in that process.
maybe I can expound that into like this is where morality, like I don't speak in terms of things being right or wrong in a moral sense when I'm working with people where everybody's morally impure, including me. You know, I've hurt people on purpose, and I'll carry that. You know, and I know I was enjoying myself at the time. You know, when you realize on the grand scale of things how much like I hurt myself, I hurt other people, I hurt society, I hurt the human project. Like it was just shit balls all the way down, right? In the actual effect I was having in the world, right? And why would anybody want to be anywhere near me? You know, that it was like you like the honest answer is I'm in my parole hearing. I actually made the case for me to stay in prison, as well as my case for leaving prison when I got let out. Or I got let out for good behavior, a bit chopped off the end, you know. But in that meeting, I actually made the case as to why they should keep me in as well, and what I was going to do if they kept me in. And this is what I'm going to do if you let me out, you know. And I told them I'm going to go and set up a farm, you know. That's what I have no contact with nature. That's something I'm completely missing in my life. I grew up in the concrete jungle, surrounded by fucking lunatics, raised by a lunatic. No wonder I'm nuts. I'm going to go take my nuts out to the field and I'm going to grow vegetables for a living, you know. Like, I don't want anything to do with animals, you know. That was it. I have some cats. And yeah, and they let me out. We just take the journey on it. And it's like, so when I'm speaking to these guys, we just drop all that. There's nobody else here, right? So the rest of it then becomes a negotiation with the rest of society. So if I want to speak to you, I have to speak in a way that you'll understand me. So I have adjusted my voice so that you can understand me. I'm speaking a little bit slower. I'm doing my best to even out my accent.
What's the natural Garlock if you weren't doing that?
I'd be mumbling most of the time. Yeah, I mumble a lot. I don't finish sentences. I speak a lot quicker.
Are you doing it now?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, because I caught it.
And it's right. So, but it's about effect, right? And a negotiation with everybody else. So I don't like in my world. I have the people I love on in my family, right? And I have then people I know, and then there's everybody else, right? I don't speak on behalf of men or two men. That is it for me, right? And so, like, morality then becomes purely a case of what you want to get out of stuff, right? So if I want to stop using violence, right, for my own personal benefit, everybody else is surely going to agree that that's a winning strategy. It's to everybody else's benefit too, right? And so, like, I had to just learn that nobody's going to trust me until they've seen it over time. For a long time, nobody trusted me on that. My wife included, you know. Everybody had to see it play out over time. I had to earn everybody's trust. So I understood that just takes time. That takes repeatedly not hitting anyone for long enough that people don't expect it from you anymore. You know, and it's like, okay, so that is like, that's the negotiation. It's unreasonable to expect anything else from everybody else. Why should they? You know? And so I then, like, in my true self, if I'm in a shop, right, it doesn't happen to me so much anymore. But I do remember one occasion where I was about 30 years old. I was having a problem in the supermarket with someone. And I'm just like, I could just bang them off the ceiling, bang them off the floor. And I'm like, I'll go find another shop. Fuck it. I'm not even going to argue with you anymore. You know, like, I don't care. Yeah, okay, you're right. You win, whatever, bye. You know, and it's just like, if I got if I wouldn't go to jail for that, I would have killed someone over a stupid argument. You know, and like, I know in my own personal development, I can't even shout. Right. If I let myself shout at somebody, 5 minutes later, I might have knocked someone's brains all over the concrete, you know. And don't let it go.
So it's not even controlling the violence; it's controlling the initial emotion that leads to the violence.
Yeah, and I just disappear into my own head, and I'm like, a win today is getting yourself back home without hurting anybody. Just go home, you know. And if I show up and I didn't accomplish whatever I had set out to do, and I came home and I said to my wife, oh, I met someone and I just had to come home, you know, and she understood. That was early on. I was like, that was as I was trying to get used to it, you know? And like the amount of disrespect that people throw at each other when there's no threat of violence, because there's no threat of violence, you know. And it's like, the more sophisticated it gets, the more aggressive it gets, you know? Uh, I've brushed off the corporate world now. I met with environmental officers. I've been to agricultural conferences and stuff. And it's like the stuff people say to each other. It's like, I know what you mean by that now. And I'm like, don't talk to me like that.
Oh,
Do you know? I won't hit you, but I will pop your car tires. And it's like, and to me, like I'm hearing people being very politely telling you go fuck yourself, and you know what I mean? And I'm like, it still means the same thing. You've just found a different fucking way to say it.
I get in fights in that world all the time. There's a aggressive. They call it passive aggressive, but there's definitely an aggressiveness underneath all of the protocol and etiquette formality.
You know, but see, that only suits me because I would operate very well in that world, where like if I felt like it, I could like open handed. You know, if we could have this agreement in society, one good one, and it's not illegal. Right? I bet you there'd be everything would chill out a small bit, you know. But this would suit me, right? If I was the type of person that would never be able to speak because every time you open your mouth, someone's going to use it as the opportunity to get their whack of the day in, you know. So I understand the rules and why they are, and I don't want the rules just to be bent in my favor, you know, to suit what I'm good at, you know. And like this is the negotiation with society. So if I want to go and eat in some of the restaurants that I sell food to, I have to put on a shirt, a tie, and a suit. Otherwise, I can't go in. You know.
But you're okay with that? Like you've become
Well, I
okay
have the
with
choice. It's not the
that.
only
Sounds
place
very
we eat.
enlightened. All of
You
that
know?
sounds very enlightened.
You know? And it's just what I want. You know. So I found a way to kind of use the philosophy of the Bible to express altruism as something that's selfish, you could say. And that's what I demonstrate to them. It's like we can get what we want by negotiating our way through civil society. And the best things we get come from cooperating with other people, you know?
You pay. I
And
pay a
it's like, I
price when
don't,
I do that. Like I compromise. I pay a price when I
yeah.
compromise myself. You have me thinking. I'm going to be thinking on that. I do
I
have.
have the luxury of not being able to just be myself, and I have to find a way to negotiate with society, you know?
Oh, I've always had that luxury, but I fought very hard for it, and maybe that's what it is. When you've had it, it's something that you don't know
But
how to
if
give up easily.
but everybody gets to choose to what degree they involve themselves. I mean,
Yeah,
like I can walk away from any situation, you know, nobody can grab me and make me stay. So I always feel like I have the power. So I always kind of remind myself that staying is a choice. And so once I have chosen to stay, you know, and it was like, so before I will shout and lose my temper, I will leave. That is a choice I will make. As soon as I feel that burning, right? Because if I start shouting, I can really go, you know. And yeah, I just don't trust myself. And now it's been so long, like it's quite easy. You know?
well, I have a couple of questions when you were talking about the lake story and the guy in the lake, and just aggression in general. I think a lot of people, especially in modern society, aggression is interpreted in a negative way. And when you were telling the guy, "Come in the lake, don't be a pussy," stuff like that, there's the term toxic masculinity that gets applied to, and hearing you talk about it, I heard it as a strength, something very positive. So I have questions about how aggression and kind of uh, trying to strengthen men up is perceived as toxic masculinity now, and maybe you could touch on it in a more positive way. And the other question I have is, you, I understand the physical, like using physicality to get to that vulnerable, to get men to be vulnerable because that's something that they do struggle with. I do a lot of my work online, and I don't have access to that physical method. And I don't know that I could pull it off even if I did. What are other ways of getting to that vulnerability or vulnerable state that you could maybe do remotely or in less physical settings?
Hmm.
So toxic masculinity,
You
aggression,
see,
and vulnerability.
oh, I'll do it in reverse order. How can you like digitally do it? Maybe through storytelling,
And
just
that's
like as
what
you
you did
said,
it today for me. Just the hearing of the story helped to do that for me.
but like I don't ever I don't do anything inside. I come inside to sleep and eat, and you know, I spend the rest of my time outside. But like lots of these guys do spend most of their time inside, and so I'm aware, like being outside and just looking at a distance of several miles into the distance is something that they might not have done. If you just think about that for a second, they've lived in a concrete jungle,
Hmm.
moved from box to box in a wet country,
And now
moved
it's a
from house
digital
to house.
jungle.
Yeah, not really spent much time outside. And so I think food has got a lot to do with it as well. I discovered that early on. None of them could cook. So it's like, right, this is how you make pot food, one pot stews.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And then I was looking stuff up. I tried gumbo from
Oh,
I'm a gumbo one time.
how
I
did
don't
it
know.
go? You know,
I
I've
liked it.
tasted.
I have no way to comparison, no way to compare it. It tasted
I
great
wish I
though.
could taste it. I'd tell you how you did.
We do have
You
excellent
did it from
farmers though.
scratch, or did you use a mix?
No, we did it from
Made your
scratch.
roux and everything else. Wow.
Yeah. Um, and so but the purpose of that wasn't necessarily teaching them cooking. That was the sideline. It was because they were eating bullshit, right? And eating shit food. And I didn't know that until I started eating good food. That it was like, oh my god! Like I used to do weights all day, not all day, every day since I was about 12. I did weights, all right. And I only stopped about 3 years ago. I moved to calisthenics, which is just using a dip bar. Um, and like I noticed that once I started eating, I was eating more vegetables than I was meat because I was growing vegetables. I started to actually bulk up, where I'd hit a kind of a plateau of size where I'd have to like do something special, like either take steroids or go on a nutritional plan or something to get bigger than I was, whilst mobile like I was. And I noticed when I cleaned my diet up, I started to bulk up, and I noticed the same thing in prison, but this was even better than in prison because I was eating all organic food, you know. And then I was like, okay, getting these guys one decent meal a day while they're working, turning it into a cookery class of how to make easy food out of raw food, cooking raw food using butter and meat fat and the stuff that people at the time anyway were saying was unhealthy, and making stews with loads and loads of potatoes, and like they were eating and they just get better fucking ideas. The whole body starts working better. They're outside getting sunshine, they're talking to other men, they're away from pressures in their life that they're normally under. There's not the normal people looking, watching their behavior, and they're starting to eat better, and they just start making better. They start feeling better, start making better decisions. They're less cranky, less liable to be just like ratty, kind of short, more open to just laughing. And then once people start laughing, they just, and then they become friends. This becomes, then they associate each other more so than me with those good feelings. People, I think in psychotherapy, that's what they call feeling safe with people. I would say that it's more like you've had a full seasoned cycle of emotions with somebody, then you feel a bit more connected with them. Once you've been sad with them and happy with them,
I call it community.
maybe community, yeah. Like with the guys, I call them the softies on Twitter, which is a bit cruel, but they come from middle class, nice homes, and their problem was lack of community. So I kind of pushed them together, told them, and they're forever like, and the parents are even worse, like really annoyed at me just calling it what it is. It's like, you haven't got any friends, you're sitting at home on your own. Like, like you don't know that the person you're speaking to isn't using a voice modulator. You know, you don't know what they look like, and even if they do show you what they look like, you can't trust it. Like, they're not real people. They're not going to show up on your birthday. You know, like, you don't have friends. Those aren't your friends. Look, you all live in the same area. None of you have friends. You're all a bunch of loners. So here you go. 4 of you are now friends. Now you got friends. Get over it really fucking quick, because you're adults and you don't have any friends. You should have done this shit when you were 10. You know? And therefore, like, I'm reflecting on it going, Jesus, I didn't have a choice. I grew up in a house. I fucking slept in a bed with 3 brothers.
Mm.
You know? Like, this is golden. The fact that my kids just left me alone for 2 hours so that I could speak to you is amazing. It never would have happened when I was a kid. Constant stuff going on, you know. And then, like, you're kind of getting out of your house because it's so busy, and then your friends just become this. You need numbers. You're in an unpoliced area. Numbers win, so you need numbers, you know. And so, yes, I had my brothers and I had my friends, and we all needed each other. We didn't go to the shop without each other. You know? And then you grew that into adulthood. And then so this idea that somebody at like 10 didn't have any brothers or sisters, wasn't pushed out of the house because the house was a nice place to be in, you know. Their parents bought them whatever they wanted, so they had PlayStation or whatever they play. And the parents are happy because the kid's not making any noise. The kid is happy because they're allowed to play their game. And then they're not learning their role socially in whatever other group of people they're with, you know, and, you know, being hurt by it, obviously, you know, the bullying works itself out and people find themselves and groups clash, and, you know, but they don't do that. They just stay at home. And then they go to college and their social life is institutional. So
Mhm.
everybody has to behave a certain way in an institution, you know. Their social life is school and college. And then they don't have any brothers and sisters. And how somebody can describe that about their own child and then not expect there to be social problems.
Well, they're well behaved.
Like I didn't have any education, and this was apparent to me. You know, how did the people that don't know what the fuck they're doing not make that mistake? You know, like, how did the clever people make that mistake? Huh? And I don't pull any punches. I just say what it is. They can leave me alone if they want to leave me alone. You know, it's all voluntary. I don't run it. I don't sit everybody down and make it happen. I just facilitate it. You know, and we'll go out for walks in the woods, or, you know, we'll go for hikes, or it's more, we don't do chopping trees or anything like that. But I try to get them together in person. It has evolved. The men's parents, the grandparents, have dropped out of the scene.
Oh,
It started with 8, it's down to 4, and the 4 of them meet together once in person and once online per week. And I try to drop into that once online thing, right? And like, I'm just prompting them. At the beginning, it was just getting them to realize you haven't got any friends. You need friends, right? If you're not earning enough money, you need to make more money. Blah, blah, blah. I don't give a shit about the economy, right? The economy is what the economy is. You have to work with what you've got. That's what it is. You're not the government minister for the economy. So forget it. You're not going to change anything. You have to work within it, you know. Figure something out. Right? It's like, well, what? I was like, well, kids have money. They didn't used to have money. That's why Andrew Tate is so popular, because there's money in 15-year-olds. There you go. The grown-ups haven't figured that one out. You know, go make some money. And like, don't be afraid. Don't think that there's something immoral about trying to make money. You know, It was you will find out for yourself that you'll get to a point where you have enough money to do what you want to do, and more money isn't helping. So, good luck on your journey to get into that point, because that's a wonderful place to get to. It's hard, Like, what? I lived in a fucking tent, and in order to get there. So don't you fucking tell me from your lovely bedroom with your parents paying for everything that it's fucking hard work. Fuck off. Do some hard work. What? Or stay in your bedroom. Nobody's pushing you out. In case you hadn't noticed, most people are happy if you stay in your bedroom.
I'm worried that that's the trend, and that the things that you describe to counteract that are being stigmatized now as toxic masculinity.
Yeah, well, at some point you have to stop listening to what the women say they think of you, right? You can call me toxic all they fucking like. Give a shit, right? What? Like, I'm married and I've got 5 kids. Why the fuck would I care if somebody I don't know thinks I'm toxic? Don't give a shit. Like, and nobody else should either. Well, if somebody calls you toxic, fuck off. Bye then. It should be the answer. Sayonara. Go do what you're doing. Don't be worrying about anybody else. Same with the young guy. The guys I deal with have met women and have kids. That's why I'm talking to them, because it's actually fucking critical they get their shit together, because there's a kid at the other end of it. And it's like, but I'm kind of saying to them, if you don't get your shit together, fucking you're better off letting someone else raise the kid. Because what kind of a fucking example are you going to give?
Mm-hmm.
How to mooch off the state, right? I think trying to convince them that it's not their fault to an extent, right? But now it's their responsibility because it's them. No one else is going to do it. Your parents still think they did a good fucking job because you're alive and you've got a college education. But not good enough, I'm afraid. Life is harder than that. Life is harder than what a degree will do for you. You have to, like, there's an expectation I get of them sometimes, and I wonder, did I miss it earlier in my life, right? And I only just become aware of it in the last 3 or 4 years. But there's a trend in them where there's this expectation of facilitation that they can identify, this isn't right. Well, why hasn't society fixed this problem? And I don't know what it's like in America, but did anybody realize that we're less than 100 years from dropping atomic bombs on cities, right? And the war being fought by people dropping bombs willy-nilly over cities of people. We're not even 2 generations, not even, right? Like, easy. Nothing's easy. Everybody wants you to sit in your fucking ass and claim benefits and spend tax money, and so that they can tax. Well, I don't even know. They're going to print the fucking tax money. Right. Anybody who sees life as a competition and wants to get some, right? It's going, hang on a minute. No, right? If I manage to have an access of $1 million after I've secured myself, right, and what I want to do in my life, that includes making sure that if something happens to me, my wife is fine, and that my kids have a head start in something, right? Whether they want to go to college or whatever. That's what, and I'm going to tell them, don't you feel guilty. And if you meet some fucking poor people who tell you you've got an advantage, you tell them, I had to live in a fucking tent to get you that fucking advantage. So you tell them, fuck off. All right. Like, there will be no fucking shame in my kids for having not grown up in the fucking gutter, I can tell you that. But it's like this expectation that it should have already been facilitated, that whatever it is that people see, how they would like to change society for the nicer, for the better, for the more moral, that they're like, why hasn't somebody done this already? It's like, this shit's ongoing, and don't think we can't go fucking back a step, right? All that Moses crap happened during the Bronze Age collapse, where up until that point, it appears at least for 6,000 years they had it together to some extent. And we're building steadily over time and built up a worldwide trade network. Right? And then boom, fucking go read the Old Testament to see how fucked up that shit was. Right? Shit can go backwards. All right. A country can go from being very rich to poor and fall apart. And like, you know, like if you see something you want to change, the appropriate thing to do is find everybody else that agrees with you and then get yourselves in a position that you can change it. You know? That's what you do. And if you shout into the void and say we should have higher taxes on sugar, people you like, and everybody tells you no, we shouldn't, and you're gonna have to go, all right, I either have to make the case and convince more people, or right. Now, I came from a land of bribery, blackmail, and threatening people to get your own way, and that was a competition of it. Right? Whoever was best at that was kingpin and got the lion's share. In the civilized world of sending each other's letters and being cross with each other and speaking ill of each other at other council meetings, which is all very easily doable, right? Anybody can get shit done. Anybody can get shit done. You know? Like I've gone into a town hall meeting that wasn't even open to the public. I didn't know it wasn't open to the public. And I stood up at the end and said, I've got something to say. I want to do this. Permissions are getting in my way. I've been asked for a license that I'm not eligible for, but I need the license for this thing that I need this thing for this thing, and it's not working, and I need your help. And they have gone, hang on a second, give your details to da-da-da-da-da. And then somebody the next day rang me. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe the government helped people. It was like, I had a problem with the Department of Transport on discs on a van one year. It was about 27, 28. And the guy was coming around doing the election campaign, and I was trying to not get caught by him. And I said it to him, I was like, all right, then if you're a politician, prove it. I'm having a problem with the Department of Transport. And I showed him what the problem was. Jesus, the next day I got a letter or a phone call, and then the following week it was fixed. And I got a letter to say it was fixed because he was a politician and he knew how to translate what I was saying into what they needed to hear to fix the problem. You know? And then had the authority to kind of say, help the citizen. I was like, I can't believe the government is here, you know? And now it's like I'm drawing grants and doing paperwork, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I was so afraid of all of this shit, right? And then like I'm meeting people who the doors are already open to, and all they have to do is fill out the fucking form, and they're telling me it's like everything's against them. What? It's so fucking easy. You don't even have to kill anyone. You know, it's like if you don't, it's like it is just a contrast. It is just a contrast. And I know to other people that sounds mad. But when I realized that the worst thing that could happen if I grew food I didn't have a license for is that somebody would send me a letter and threaten to deny me any future licenses I might apply for. I was like, these people don't know how to threaten people. I should work for the government. Like, that's not how you get people to pay license fees. What kind of a shakedown is this? So yeah, I just like I would wish to encourage people that anything can be done. Like you can go from anywhere to anywhere. We have such a mobile society. We really do, right? And like you have to know yourself, know your strengths, or whatever. I'm an organizer. I'm better at organizing than I am at doing the work. I'm better at firing up a group of people and keeping them orientated than I am keeping myself oriented. In fact, I will orient myself off my need to orient others. But like, don't ask me to sit down and do something for 2 hours. I can't do it. You know, I've got that type of personality, and then I would encourage people to understand what they've got and then cooperate with other people. You know? Find other people with similar goals and cooperate with them. You know. You look like you're about to speak.
No,
I'm firing stuff out there like mad because I'm on a high from working. So
Oh. No, I just see so much potential. Like organize a men's group or something for men. Like people like you are so valuable, especially right now at the time we're in.
yeah, I mean, I like all of this stuff has to be done in person. I mean, I can talk as much as I can talk, but I think there's a limit even to how much I can communicate an idea
Yeah, but
when
don't
I hit a bit of flow.
underestimate. Don't like just this little video we did today. Don't underestimate the power and potential that even your talking has.
Mm. I was like, on top of that, so like there was just to give you actual something on mental health other than just being mental and healthy. Which is what I would consider myself. I don't worry about any of it. Right? I know that I come off as mad to some people. I know that 9 out of 10 people I meet are going to be like, and won't have anything to do with me. And then the people that do like my personality or like being around me, that's
Yep,
great.
same with
It's
me.
honestly earned, I would say. Right. But sorry, I lost my trail of thought. My brain power is fading
Oh,
now.
something about mental health or
Yeah, I would say that mentally healthy is like kind of in the sense that I don't try to draw myself towards the average. Like I know I'm extreme in certain areas, and I'm obviously not in other areas. I'm gonna be crap in some stuff. And like you said, don't adjust yourself to fit society. It's like I'm happy with playing a game to fit in because everybody's playing a fucking game.
I'm
You know?
not. I never could crack the game. That's why I'm
Uh,
where I am now.
like you can have your defenses down when it's appropriate and be yourself. Like you can put on a suit to go and eat in a restaurant and start with the knife and fork on the outside and work your way in as they bring you food. Right? It's not hard to do. But if you want to talk to some people, that's the only time they've got in the week to speak to you. And they want to know, can you play that game before they're willing to engage with you? And then you have the choice. Do you want to do it or do you not? Right.
Or
So
can't some of us can't. Like I'm thinking of autism spectrum. Like some of us, the game is beyond our perception, beyond our. There's a certain cognitive processing that it takes to understand and execute the game. There's a lot of non-verbal, non-visual, non-obvious components to the game.
okay. There's two different things I think that you're getting mixed together. Right. There is right. When I deal with a general manager of a hotel, I try not to curse. Try not to use fucking shit.
When I used to
Right.
teach, that was one of the hardest things to learn was not curse in front of the kids. I did learn that one.
Right. And so I don't speak as freely as I am trying to speak now. Right. I don't let it go. I'm still on guard. My conscious brain is still one step behind what I'm saying.
That's a skill though. Like
Right.
that is a learned
Uh,
skill.
right. But there is don't say fucking shit. Tell the truth, kind of in a business sense, right? And then like don't speak about other people's business that I know about, right? Financial business or working business. And so there is a kind of a little set of rules to do with being polite, right? As I said, the consequences for this, whatever, they're not real consequences. They're inconveniences. Right. And then like with the chefs, then I can be a little bit more loose, right? Because I'm dealing with chefs. They don't mind that. And they're talk about mental health. You could do a chef special. They've got everything. Everything. They've got like new stuff, hybrid stuff, you name it, right? Loads of addiction. Loads. Right. It's a specialized, they need to be highly organized and creative. I think it's just too much for some people. Right. But like, so there's these modes, right? So then there's like, this is professionalism, and it's just like, that is a game that you both agree to play so that you can accomplish something together, right? I don't need to know what kind of person he is, whether he's happy in his relationship. We're there only doing business, right? And there's like cash flow statement. He has to be able to ask for that, and I can produce that. I have to know what that means and have that document, right? And I had to get myself up to speed on everything to do with accounting to be able to speak to the bank. And at the beginning, I had to be very humble. I had to say, I have to write this down and find out what it is, you know. And a lot of the stuff I have to speak to the revenue. First time I phoned the revenue, I was like, "Stop speaking in Irish to me. I can't speak Irish. I have to speak English." She's like, "I'm not speaking Irish," and I don't know what you mean. It's been a form. What do you mean form? I'm fine. Form to me meant like mood, you know.
Oh,
Fill out the form. I'm like, I'm. What do you mean? You haven't got an F11 form. I'm not on drugs. Right. So all of these are modalities that you learn to accomplish something. I mean, there's no connection going on. I mean, like the fact that like we eat our starter first, followed by our main course, followed by our dessert. Like, you know, who gives a fuck? Like the waiter don't care. If I have to wear the certain tie, right? This is related to how it makes some people feel. It doesn't make me feel any way. I try very hard to look through people's presentation, you know,
mhm.
and make a mental note of how they have tried to present themselves rather than that's what they look like. Now, this is how the person chose to present themselves rather than that's what they look like. And so I know it's a charade. I think it's funny that this charade happens, but it serves a purpose, and I have the choice to entertain or I don't entertain. And I also have the choice to open a restaurant and make everybody has to wear a hat. I have my own stupid fucking rule, right? And it's just, it doesn't mean anything because there's not about people connecting. It's not about human connection, you know. Me and the waiter aren't having a moment, even if we are, you know. So if he recognizes I'm not stiff and it's a place where he normally meets people who are stiff, then he might feel he can. Yeah, I don't bother with that fucking his crap, and I might get a bit of human out of him.
Mhm.
You know, we're still not connecting as people. You know, we're just highway travelers, and that's it. You know, and there's no energy required. I just need to know how to get what I want, and he needs to know how to get what he wants. And there is, depending on where you are and what's happening, there is a framework, right? You're mixing that framework, whether it's professional or whatever, with whether or not people like you, right?
I don't know.
So picking up on the social cue, right? If everybody gets up and walks out of the room and for some reason something happened and you didn't get the
They
you
do
don't
that
know
all the
what you're
time.
doing.
I don't know how they're syncing. I don't know how they're knowing to get up at the same time. It's all happening non-verbally. That happens all the time, and I'm the one sitting there like, why is everybody getting up?
Right. You can dismiss that, right? In the sense of, as long as you recognize everybody else for some reason picked the cue to get up and I was a bit slow, right? Happens in mass all the time. I'm like, shit, I'm sitting and I should be kneeling. Fuck, right? Catholic mass is funny. People notice these things.
Oh yeah, I grew up
Uh,
Catholic.
but so like there's a layer to that where did anybody else notice that you were the last to get up? Possibly. Depends on how long the delay was, right? Being the last person to stand up, somebody's going to be. If 12 people are in the room and everybody leaves, somebody's going to be the first, somebody's going to be the last, somebody's going to be closest to the median, you know? Right. Whether anybody pays attention to that, normally somebody gets up and leaves, other people will just, and it'd be like, the meeting isn't over, sit the fuck down. Somebody else could be thinking, why is everyone leaving?
Mhm.
And they just go along with it because they're like, why? When somebody might not have even, somebody may have initiated this domino effect of cues, right? And it relies on whoever's actually in authority
Yes, there's this. There's this
to
subtle
put
hierarchy
you
that
right,
people are following.
right. But even the subtle hierarchy, like maybe I'm just too in my own head, worried about my own thing, like I think that I may have missed the cue. Why has everyone left? Right. But then not spent any more time thinking about it
Oh,
after I had actually left. Everybody, all right, I'll
oh
leave.
no, I obsess over it. I have to figure out why. I have to understand things.
Right.
So,
So at
how it
what point
works.
did you, yeah. Okay. So how did the second and the third person know? Right. How did the early leavers know? Right.
That's
They probably had a different perspective than you. You know, maybe they have a closer relationship to the person that started the domino effect. Right.
I don't know,
But
it's
I
like a
think,
herd instinct that
right. But
you
you
take
have to
advantage.
actually care whether, like, obviously, you're not going to just continue to sit there until
Yeah, oh,
somebody
no, I
tells
will.
you to leave, right? So now you're kind of guessing that everybody else has noticed that you were the last to get up. Right? Nobody knows how you got your cue to stand up and leave if you didn't notice it was over. If somebody didn't say, okay, now the meeting's over, right? And you missed it. Right? Or somebody expressed that in a non-direct way that you didn't pick up on. Maybe you were, why is that tile crooked? When it got said, right? For whatever reason, you've missed it, right? And it would seem to be that you think everybody else knows what's going on in your head, right? You don't even know if anybody else noticed that you were having such an experience and that you missed it, right? You don't actually know that. Right? You don't know if it's safe, it's 12 people, if the last 6 don't know and they're just gonna go. You don't know. Are they having a similar experience to you, but they're having a higher anxiety, so they were faster on it? Right? Like, did you see that clip of a fella who was jogging and he ran past a restaurant and everybody in the restaurant got up and ran thinking he was running away from something?
No,
Yeah.
that sounds weird
CCTV
to
clip.
me. It's on YouTube.
Yeah. And it's the CCTV of outside the restaurant. And all it took was one person to misunderstand it. And then when one person got up, and they didn't even run at first, then somebody else became alert. And the alertness of the other person, boom, gone.
That's so weird to me.
And everybody got up and ran. Right. And this is it. If you were sitting at a restaurant outside and on a streetway, and everybody got up and ran, would you wait and find out?
No, I would have to know why I'm running before I could run.
You would sit there and wait and
Yeah,
find out.
like why is everybody running? What's
Well, you
going on?
see, people like that normally get eaten by the tiger.
Yeah, I know it's and it's
This
not
is
so much about
evolutionary.
I'm surprised I made it to the age I did. It's not so much about being liked, but you get treated differently if you don't know how to play the second game that you're talking about. Because I don't care if people like me or not. Uh, Everyone's free to like whoever they want, but you do get treated differently by society.
Yeah, you see, I'm more inclined to, like, rather than be sitting there when everybody else leaves and not know what it's like, I'm the kind of person that will, like, wait till everybody's distracted and then just leave because I don't want to be there anymore.
Oh, I'll just get up and leave.
Yeah. That's incredibly impolite. Incredibly
Yeah, I
impolite.
know,
Mhm.
but I don't know anything else. I don't have that subtlety stuff.
Well, I left a small gathering where I brought the children. It was just it was I didn't like the mode, right? If anybody was saying that, like, I was prepared to defend my decision to leave and take the two younger kids with me, you know, and in that whatever was supposed to be happening wasn't actually happening, you know, that everybody was playing too much of a game and I'm out here, you know, and I didn't get challenged on it, so it never came up. I'm gonna have to let you go, Jeff. Jeff,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna have to let you go. My wife just got home.
Oh, I thought you were telling the story. Okay.
No,
Well,
sorry.
okay. This has been great. Thank you so much. Is there anything like websites or anything you want to promote or put in the description? I feel like I got more out of this than I've gotten talking to most therapists. So thank you very much. You do good work.
Yeah, you just need to talk to other people. Just
Yeah.
people. Yeah. Therapists are trying to work out what the right, what the wordy version of the right suit to wear to look normal for everybody else.
Well,
Don't worry about being normal. Again.
thank you again. Go be with the wife, and we'll do it again sometime.
Great to chat with you, Jeff. You too.
You